Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us in the spiritual practice series of Sanctuary of Earth. We offer this program to help us all bridge the theoretical, empirical, and philosophical with our lived experiences on topics of spirituality and consciousness. And we offer a range of options to promote individualization of our unique interface with the divine. Oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Susanna Calvert, and one of the founding board members of the Sanctuary of Earth. We do offer this program in partnership with the Richmond Ions Group, which focuses on the science of spirituality, with this series providing a complementary counterpoint by focusing on practice and embodiment. We want to be our spiritual beliefs, not just talk about them. And we meet by the first Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And I already thank you in advance for considering donating to support this program, and with the friendly amendment by Lawrence of $20 if you are able. A bit about Sanctuary of Earth. We are still a relatively new organization whose mission is to actualize human spiritual potential on Earth and for Earth by providing the bridge between the cognitive and the empirical to the lived, embodied, grounded, and practical. We will be creating beautiful interactive online skill development modules, but in the meantime, we are offering a number of courses and programs and events in the community. And I'm putting a link to the flyer in the chat. This just went out by email as well. So if you are not on our mailing list and you would like to be on our mailing list, it's really just for announcement about courses and programs. And you could just put your email in the chat and I'll add you to our mailing list. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to now introduce our speaker. We are so lucky to have Dr. Kelly Cummings with us tonight. She's also, well, let's see, what would we call you? But a core member of the Sanctuary of Earth team, I guess I would say. She's also an accomplished healthcare professional with a passion for healing. She is so multi-talented as well. She's highly experienced registered nurse with more than 40 years of healthcare experience. And in addition, she is a registered yoga teacher, a board certified health and wellness coach, mindfulness and meditation teacher, and certified death doula. Her doctoral studies focused on evaluation of the social construction of nurse-patient relationships through an appreciative inquiry lens. I love that framework. Above all, Kelly believes that everyone has the ability to be a healer and to heal, and she's gonna help us all learn to be better healers and heal ourselves today too. She is as passionate about life as she is about death, and I wish everybody felt the same way. We don't have to be so afraid of death, and Kelly's going to help us understand that today. And when she is not working, which I don't think is very often, she enjoys hiking, climbing, reading, cooking, and spending time with family and friends. So Kelly, thank you for being our speaker tonight. And thank you everybody again for joining us in our program.
Okay. Before I get started, what I would love to do is just go around the room and just have everybody introduce themselves and just where you are and maybe one word of what you're hoping for tonight. So I'm going to start because Lawrence is the first one on my screen. I'm going to start with Lawrence.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Schechter. I'm an architect, parenthetically retired, but that never seems to be happening. But I'm here, new from the West Coast, just arrived on January 5th from Bend, Oregon. And I've come here because I feel I've been called to serve the advancement of consciousness with Sanctuary of Earth, Ions, and other affiliated endeavors.
Thank you. Hey, Tammy.
Hey, Kelly. I'm really interested to get a closer look at how you are approaching death in your practice. It's very interesting to me. I had worked with this a lot for about 10 years, and I'm very excited to hear your process and what you have to bring to it tonight.
Okay, thanks. June and your friend.
Yeah, my name's June, and this is Kinkers, the cat. I live in Minneapolis, and I found this offering and am interested. I've read Francis Weller's book, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, and have recently lost my partner and husband about 8 months ago. And so just looking for ways to deepen and hold this process well. It's very foreign to me. Not really, well, I've experienced losses, but nothing in comparison. So.
Thank you, June. Thanks for being here.
Mhm.
Chuck, if you're there.
Oh, there he is. I'm a retired physician, internist, geriatrician, palliative care academic, and retired 15 years ago. Went to seminary, then became a near-death experience facilitator, and then got into A Course in Miracles, and then now in 3 or 4 groups and studying that. So I was attracted to your background. It's fascinating.
Glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm in Richmond too.
Okay. Jay.
I am Kelly's husband and occasionally do a program with her, but mostly probably need to do more programs as a student of hers. So I'm excited to participate in this one.
This is the first time I've had my husband in a class. Renee. Hi, Renee.
Hi, I'm Renee Poindexter, Renee Beth Poindexter from Lake Oswego, Oregon. I have an organization called Living the Potential Network, and I'm an agent for change makers to elevate our consciousness for creating peace and love and harmony on the planet, and partnering with Sanctuary of Earth. And so excited to be with you, Kelly, to hear your talk today, because I just love you as a person. You're such an amazing being. And I would really like to understand and appreciate how to, I'm not afraid of death, but I think there's another understanding for the preciousness of life while we're living it, and how to embrace death with a higher consciousness. So I think you're probably going to share some of that. Thank you. Thank you for speaking today.
Thanks. Yeah, welcome. Jonathan.
Good evening, Kelly, everyone. I'm just down the hall from Lawrence, so I'm here in Richmond as well. And I'm interested specifically to hear all of the sort of spectrum of grief that we can feel, and if it starts to perhaps be categorized, if you experience an opportunity to grieve when you're younger, and possibly even as a man, and then as you start to have more of a conversation with yourself, how these conversations of being aggrieved in situations and grieving loss and coming back to it, but truly releasing it in layers is developed.
Okay, let me remember that so I can touch on that when we get to that point. Thanks. Linda. You're on mute, Linda.
You're muted.
Linda, you're muted. Can you start again?
She's still muted.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. You got it.
Yeah.
This little tiny phone died and I'm just barely hanging on right now. I'm a yoga instructor, and I'm wanting to incorporate with breath work the embracing of life, and also the embracing of death. Um, Working on not just the duality of the positive and the negative, but maybe finding that place in between where these things that seem to be opposites actually kind of coexist, or maybe even create another living three-dimensional element that is, it is what it is, and it's good. So
Francis Weller calls that the liminal space.
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Being in the liminal space, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good term, right?
Oh, excellent. I have a lot to learn. I'm interested in the philosophy, but then the application to yoga, and I'm considering working in hospice. So
Wonderful, wonderful, thanks. And Mark, last but not least.
I was going to introduce Linda if she hadn't, because I know she's one of my friends.
Oh, okay.
I'm Mark. I'm a civil engineer, 2.5 years past retirement, but still playing around with rivers and lakes and dams. And let's see, personal motivation is my younger brother actually passed away less than 6 months ago. So looking for some inside aspects of the process.
Very good. And what we will hopefully address all of your all of what you're asking for. And what I'm so excited about, when Susanna and I chatted earlier today, I told her I rely on the wisdom of the group for this to be successful, because I know there's always so much wisdom out there when people show up to talk about grief. So it sounds like there's a lot of wisdom, and hopefully we can have some pretty rich conversations. So we're going to start with a meditation, a healing, in a healing loving kindness meditation. So if you're comfortable, you can turn off your camera and just get comfortable in your seat and settle in. Let your body soften. And now just let your attention come to your heart. Let each breath be drawn into your heart. And let each exhalation release the pain from your heart. There's so much holding and so much armor around your heart. So much life unlived, so much unloved there. As you breathe into your heart, feel the mercy enter in. Notice as your heart begins to fill with loving kindness. We carry such pain, such judgment, such unkindness for ourselves. Let the breath of the heart dissipate your pain. And as you breathe in, stay in your heart. May I be happy. May I be free of suffering. May I be at peace. May I be happy. May I be free of suffering. May I be at peace. As you gently let go of your breath, say, may my pain be healed. May I enter joy, the joy of my true nature, beyond even this longing to be free. May I be free of suffering. May I be happy. May I be at peace. With each breath, draw in a sense of well-being and a wish for your own healing and contemplation. May I be happy. May I be at peace. May I be free of suffering. Let your heart look upon you as if you were its only child. Let it direct toward you feelings of well-being. Let it embrace you. Let yourself in. Breathe yourself into your heart in mercy and loving kindness. Notice whatever tries to block this, the self-judgment, the distrust, the mercilessness with yourself, and let it be breathed out. Let it be displaced by loving kindness with each breath into your heart. May I be happy. May I heal the anger, the judgment, the pain, the indifference, my forgetfulness. May I be free of suffering. May I be at peace. Allow each breath to soften your body and clear your mind and open your heart. Let each breath heal us back into ourselves, into our beauty, into the vastness of our nature. May I be happy. May I be free of suffering. May I be at peace. Allow yourself to let go of all the blocks that prevent you from entering your own heart. Each breath drawing and healing. Each exhalation releasing the pain and clearing away the armor. Peace comes into the heart like the morning sun spreading across the ocean. It's the ocean of compassion. It's the bright light of mercy flooding the heart, welling over into the body. The whole body softening in mercy and in loving kindness, embracing yourself. Let yourself be healed into your own forgiveness and loving kindness. And recognizing that just as you wish to be happy, so do all beings everywhere. Begin to send this healing kindness, this loving mercy out to another, perhaps a dear friend, a loved one, a beloved person in your life. Send them the same wish for their well-being that you're absorbing into your body. Let this loved one be immersed in your loving kindness. Silently say, may you be happy, may you be free of suffering, and may you be at peace, just as I wish to be happy, so I know do you. May your life be filled with life and loving kindness and forgiveness for yourself and all others. May you be free of suffering. May you be at peace. May you be happy. And let this love extend to everyone in the house in which you sit now, or the room in which you find your meditation growing in your heart. May all these beings be free of suffering. May all these beings be filled with the luminescent happiness of their original nature. May they be healed into the peace we all seek. And expanding this loving energy, let it radiate from your heart until it encompasses everyone in the city and state where you live, in the world where we all find ourselves, embracing equally all in pain, all those whose hearts cannot yet see, all those whose pain is too great to sense the possibility of healing, breathing mercy to all beings in suffering, all those so in need of love, so in need of healing. Let them be encompassed by the radiance of your heart. May all beings be free of suffering. Let this loving kindness expand into every plane of reality, seen and unseen. May all beings, no matter what form they take, no matter what pain assails them, be free from suffering. May all beings be blessed, from the ancient saints to those yet to be born. May all be at peace. May all beings be free of suffering. May they receive the healing that they take birth for. May all awaken to the true heart's release. May all beings everywhere be free of suffering. May all beings everywhere be at peace. Just take a couple of breaths and come back to our group. And we'll get started. There will be several activities, meditations, or writing practices for us today. And I wanted to start out with one. And it is really just to kind of get into the loss and grief space. And I just want you to take 5 minutes, just 5 minutes without stopping of writing. And if the pen, you run out of things to say, just fill it in with something. But for 5 minutes, just write to one of these prompts. I know you might need to go get paper and pen. And hopefully after you are done writing, you'll be willing to share what you wrote. There's no requirement. And I'll also say at any point, if this gets difficult for you and you feel like you want to just stop, just breathe into that. Just take that time, just soften into it. The grief that might come up for you. We're going to encourage you to just be with it and open your heart to that. So, and if you need any support in that, certainly just let us know. But the prompts are, and you can pick one or a couple, but you have 5 minutes. I remember, I mourn, I miss, I wish someone would ask me, my tears, or enough. So I'm going to start a timer. Everybody have what they need. And you write for 5 minutes.
One more minute. Okay. I think we could ask a couple of people if they'd like to share what they wrote. Is anybody wanting to share? If not, that's perfectly fine, but I would at least read it out loud to somebody. After we're done at some point, read it to somebody. Lawrence. You can go. You gotta come off mute.
Well, I remember you saying to bring some kind of a relic. And I brought a card concerning the memorial service for my parents in 1999, exactly 3 weeks and 25 years ago. I remember Dad as a kind and sweet, generous, sensitive person. I remember our motorcycle trip across the Golden Gate Bridge to witness sunrise from the top of Mount Tamalpais. We wept as the dawn lit our hearts to be at peace, in love with each other and all life. I remember how proud I was of him for riding together through the morning fog up the winding back roads to the summit. I remember how emotional he was when he had to return home alone. And I remember how I missed him as Alzheimer's took him from me and our family, 1 ounce of life at a time. I remember dying numerous times as his life snuck away, and he forgot my name. I remember that I forgot to grieve deeply his passing, as though he was never far away, but now I grieve to let go and bless our time together.
Thank you, Lawrence. Beautiful. Anybody else like to share? Thank you, Lawrence, for sharing. So,
I'll share. I don't think I want to read.
oh, okay. Thank you,
I
Susanna.
don't think I want to read mine, but I just appreciate the prompt because I don't know, for some reason, the words just sort of elicited, my grief and loss over my late husband. And he passed away 5 years ago. And, most of the time it's, I just feel the blessings of having been with him, and the grief comes up periodically, but something about the wording of your prompt, Kelly, made me really get in touch with that again. So, and just remember how much I love him and miss him. And thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so what we're going to talk about this evening, we're going to talk about the 5 gates of grief. And So June, you probably are familiar with these if you're familiar with Francis Weller. So we're going to do that. We're going to talk about the understanding the relationship with grief. We're going to share our relationship with grief with one another and develop an understanding of what an apprenticeship could look like and what it could offer. And then really just kind of spend some time talking about the significance of community in the work of grieving. And I'm not sure, I won't get the quote exactly right, but there's a quote about, you know, somebody can't take the steps with you on your grief journey, but it sure is nice to have someone along for the walk. And I think that's a real important part with grief. Grief in our world is often very private and very isolating. Actually today, a very wonderful woman, a friend of mine who I work with, found out very suddenly that her niece, who was at Penn State, just died, just out of nowhere, no warning, nothing. So these kinds of things, you know, if she had to go to the airport by herself and rush, she'll be in community with her family when she gets there. But, you know, that's a time where community is so important and family and friends are so important. So we'll spend some time talking about that too. So these are the 5 gates of grief. And really they're expressions of grief. There are probably more than 5. Trauma may have its own category. The grief of trauma may have its own category. But these are 5 that people can usually understand, but sometimes we forget about. These are the things that cause us grief. When we do think of grief and loss, we usually think about a death of a of a loved one or a friend or family. But there are 5 pretty big chunks of grief in our lives. And the first one is everything we love will lose. We talked about this before everybody got on, that just the sense of impermanence in our lives. The other one, the second gate is the places that have not known love. That's within ourselves. It's that shame or that, and the sorrows of the world. What we expected and didn't receive. And then our ancestral grief. So the first one is probably the one we're most familiar with. And there's a portion of a poem here. "'Tis a fearful thing to love what death can touch, to love, to dream, and oh, to lose." And we know that love and grief go hand in hand. When you love somebody, you know that that is going to, in some ways, come with some grief. And in our lives, we know that the things that we love will not be with us forever. So these are the kind of things that most people are familiar with when they think about grief. The places that have not known love, those are the places within us that we have hidden, or that bring us shame, or that we have really not given enough love through our lives, probably occurring through childhood. And I'll share this poem. Finally, on my way to yes, I bump into all the places where I said no to my life, all the untended wounds, the red and purple scars, those hieroglyphs of pain carved into my skin and bones, those coded messages that send me down the wrong street again and again where I find them, the old wounds, the old misdirections, and I lift them one by one close to my heart, and I say, holy, holy. So one of the things that the work of grief does is help us bring love and compassion to those places that we haven't shown love before. But, you know, we need to do that shadow work, and that's part of that shadow work, is to find those places that have been neglected, let's say neglected by us. The sorrows of the world. None of these things, but somebody was talking earlier about the grief bringing in other feelings of grief. And I think that's what happens with the 5 gates is you may be experiencing the loss of a loved one, but what comes along with it is the other grief that compounds it. These are the things that add to our suffering, our sorrows. In the sorrows of our world right now, the things that we're experiencing on our planet, in our world, in our country, around the world is very sorrowful. Sometimes it's difficult to get through what we see on the news or what we're hearing and experiencing in our world. This one is one that kind of surprised me is what I expected and didn't get as a form of grief. And I thought about it, and I share an example with you. Many years ago now, it seems like it was in 2015. So almost 10 years ago, my whole life just turned upside down. And I had felt like I had worked really hard to get to where I was. I was a good mom, I was a good wife, and everything turned upside down. And I thought, I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't get what I expected. It was incredibly painful. And I just thought it was the loss of, the life that I had. But it was more than that. It's like I expected certain things and I didn't get them. Everything just ended. And so there are lots of things, lots of examples. You work hard for a promotion and you don't get it. That causes grief. That causes us to have to be sorrowful. And I included this poem by Emily Dickinson. I dropped so low in my regard, I heard it hit the ground and go to pieces on the stone at bottom of my mind. Yet blamed the fate that fractured, less than I reviled myself for entertaining plated wares upon my silver shelf. So I put things high on the shelf above things, and then I get mad when I drop them, or it's that expectation that we don't get that can contribute to our sorrow. And then ancestral grief. This is a tough one too, and I think this is something that I'm just beginning to learn about. The grief of our ancestors is carried at a cellular level, but it's also carried at a cultural level and at a community level. And it really is, it's one of the tougher ones to do on your own. One of the things that ancestral grief responds well to are community rituals. So just curious, before we go any further, now that you kind of have an understanding of categories of grief, and like I said, there's more than that, but these are the typical categories that we find ourselves faced with. What's your relationship with grief? How do you let me see, what's the other way of asking that question? How have you learned to be with grief? Or what's your relationship with grief?
I'll share. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I wiggled around with my controls here. So one way I find that I deal with grief is in my dreams. My parents passed away in the mid-teens, and my brother just passed away this past year. And somehow I maintain what I feel is like a connection in the dream state, which I find to be somewhat offsetting the physical grief from separation.
But you still feel connected to them in your dreams.
Right. That it continues to create some kind of bond, although less stable.
Susanna.
Well, I got up close and personal with grief when my husband got sick and then passed away. And I just knew I had to go through it, not around it. And that was actually one of the lessons of my late husband. He always taught me to feel my feelings. And I knew that if I would just sit with the grief, that it would just dissipate. And I was just grateful for that practice he taught me before he passed away. But the other thing, I guess, like with Mark, it just gave me a lot of comfort to connect with him energetically after he passed away. Like his presence was very palpable. And it was, and I was having a spiritual awakening too. So I was learning to channel and communicate with my guides and all that. But my connection to him after he passed away was such that I could go, do you have a such and such account? What's your username? What's your password? And I would get this information from him. So, I mean, I thought I was going crazy, but when it actually worked and I was able to pull down information like that, find things and get passwords and all, I knew it was more than that. And all of that just completely changed my relationship with death and dying, because I could viscerally feel that that death is just a transition. It is not an ending at all, that it's like water going from ice to water vapor. And but our loved ones are still there. So it just gave me so much comfort.
Thank you. Anybody else want to share their relationship with grief or sorrow?
My current relationship with grief is pretty multifaceted. I also feel very connected to my partner. I feel his presence, and he's given me, guidance when I've been solo canoeing or, different places. I've or half awake, half asleep times. I feel his presence and communication, and also, feel comfort in that. But then there's places where I know that, it's a very unconscious thing that I'm not feeling my grief, and I recognize that in my body. And sometimes I recognize when I'm not myself, with some anger, agitation, and the anger, and I recognize that the anger actually is that I'm not feeling my feelings. So I can feel that in my body, and kind of get the cue to move it through. I'm a body work and a nurse practitioner, and I I do a lot of somatic practice. So that is the language that I try to follow, and am humbled by what is not conscious. It's not always a conscious process. It feels just something very not much to be followed, and like getting to know it.
Is the it your soul by any chance, June? That unconscious piece, is that your soul
You know, I recognize my soul. I feel like I'm talking about grief as a very multifaceted.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I say getting to know it, it's all the facets of grief, you know, like there's some that I'm more comfortably acquainted with and some that I'm not. And it's, you know, the ones I'm not that are you know, uncomfortable or, you know, some that I'm humbled by sometimes, you know, and just very much brought to my knees around the ways I thought I controlled life or that I thought that, you know, I was responsible for what happened somehow very unconsciously. You know,
Wow.
you make good choices and good things will happen. And if bad things happen, it's because you didn't make good choices. You did something wrong. I mean, that's just something that was ingrained in my childhood. I didn't realize I believed it. And so, yeah, I mean, I'll pause, but I'm, you know, definitely.
Thank you. Thanks. Anybody else? Okay. We're gonna do another practice. And this is really to drop into the grief, to take the descent into the underworld, metaphorically, obviously. So we're gonna get comfortable again. And close your eyes and focus on your breath. Put all of your attention on the air going in and out of your nostrils. Take 3 deep breaths and give yourself the suggestion that with each exhalation, your body becomes more and more relaxed. Now imagine that you're about to make your descent to the underworld to meet your sister or brother. You prepare for your journey by dressing in your finest clothes, including your crown, your royal cloak, and all your jewels. You walk down a path that begins to spiral downward, and in the distance, you see a gate of your own creation. In front of the gate awaits a gatekeeper. As you approach, the gatekeeper looks you in the eye and asks, "What is it that you want?" You reply, "I journey to the underworld to meet my sister or brother." The gatekeeper leaves you at the gate and goes to the underworld to announce your arrival. The gatekeeper tells you you must undergo the same rites as everyone else who enters the underworld. You must arrive naked and bowed low. The gatekeeper returns and asks you to remove your crown. You reach up and take off your crown and hand it to the gatekeeper. What does the crown look like? What does it mean to you? Could it be that the crown represents your attachment to your mind and what it tells you about yourself? What does it feel like to take off your crown? Are you ready to give it up? The gatekeeper accepts your crown, bows low before you, and opens the gate. You cross the threshold and continue down the path, going deeper and deeper. At the next gate, the gatekeeper asks you to remove your necklace. What does it look like? Is it heavy? Is it encrusted with gems? Or is it a simple strand of silver or gold? What does it mean to you? Could it be the cultural and familial voices who told you who to be? Perhaps it's your need for external approval. What does it feel like to release it at this point? The gatekeeper accepts your necklace, bows low before you, and opens the gate. You cross the threshold and continue down the path. The next gatekeeper asks you to remove your robe or your outer cloak. What color is it? What is its texture? How has it weighed you down? What does it mean to you? Perhaps your need for power and status? How does it feel to take it off? The gatekeeper receives your cloak and opens the gate. You cross the threshold and continue your descent. At the fourth gate, the gatekeeper asks you to remove your shirt. What color is it? What type of material? What does it represent to you? Could it be the ways in which you have injured your heart? Perhaps you have negative feelings like shame or guilt or anger for yourself. How does it feel to take it off? The gatekeeper accepts your shirt, bows low before you, and you continue on your journey. At the next gate, the gatekeeper asks you to remove your skirt or pants and undergarments. What color are they? What kind of undergarments do you wear? What meanings do your undergarments have for you? Perhaps they represent your attachment to your sexuality or sexual wounds. The gatekeeper accepts your clothes, bows low before you, and opens the gate. You cross the threshold and continue on the spiral path, going deeper and deeper into the underworld. At the seventh gate, the gatekeeper asks you to remove your shoes. What do your shoes look like? How do they feel? Are they comfortable? What do they mean to you? Perhaps they represent your connection to your body and the earth, or how you moved through life. How do you feel as you relinquish your shoes? The gatekeeper takes them, bows low before you, and opens the gate. You walk forward into the darkness to meet your sister or brother. Naked, you approach cautiously. It's dark, but you look closely, wanting to see their face. What do they look like? Who do they remind you of? Who are they? You bow down low. They stare at you with a piercing gray gaze. You see just how much they have suffered. In that moment, you know that you have abandoned them and abandoned yourself. She reaches out and takes your hand. You're afraid she'll lead you to a cave and leave you there. Instead, she takes you into a cave where she wraps you in a blanket. You sit across from them and together you mourn. You stay there together for many, many days. Eventually, you begin to feel restored. You express your gratitude and promise them that you will never abandon them again. They remind you to never abandon yourself. How do you feel as they say this to you? Together you leave the cave and they tell you it's time for you to make your return. They advise you to reclaim only those parts of yourself you're willing to honor. They embrace you and ask you if you're ready to leave. How do you feel as you say your farewell? You begin your long journey out of the underworld. The path is dark, but it spirals upward and there's a dim light in the distance. The gatekeeper awaits you and hands you your shoes. As you put them on, you notice they feel different. As you pass through the gate, what do you reclaim? The gatekeeper bows low and blesses your return. The gatekeeper at the sixth gate hands you your skirt your pants and your undergarment. You notice how they fit. What is it you wish to reclaim? Perhaps your love and appreciation for yourself, your certainty that you have a choice. You pass for the gate and continue upward. At the next gate, the gatekeeper hands you your shirt. Notice how much lighter you feel as you put them on. What positive feelings about yourself are you willing to reclaim? Perhaps now you will celebrate yourself as you pass through the gate. You continue traveling to the next gate where the gatekeeper hands you your cloak or your coat and you put it around your shoulders. You reclaim who you want to be in the world as an authentic person, not the person you once were. The gatekeeper bows low before you and journeys as you journey to the next gate. The next gate, the gatekeeper puts on your necklace. How does it feel? How does it look? What are you reclaiming? Perhaps you find your voice. You speak aloud positive affirmations such as, I'm strong, I'm loved. The gatekeeper smiles and opens the gate. At the final gate, the gatekeeper awaits you with your crown. As you place it on your head, you feel different. The gatekeeper acknowledges you as the queen or king of your kingdom and bows low before you. As you cross the threshold to the upper world, you have a deeper understanding about yourself and appreciation for your journey. You have made your descent and returned with more of you intact. Walk, dance, and celebrate your new being. Okay, so here's another writing exercise. And obviously this is a metaphor for the traveling into grief. As you travel into your grief, you give up and become low. You become humble. And as you leave that journey of grief, you become lighter and more aware of yourself and who you want to be. That's the expectation or the metaphor for grief. So take 5 minutes and write consistently for 5 minutes. And at each step, what did you give up and what did you reclaim and what did it mean to you? I'll start the timer.
All right, 1 minute left. Okay. You don't have to tell us what you wrote, but how was that practice for you?
I think it was a really interesting exercise, Kelly, and I wasn't sure I got it until just just this moment, because what happened for me was like I didn't mind giving any of it up except for my shirt and my underwear, and to me that represents like my physical comfort and safety. But I realized like this experience with my husband dying and going to the grief, like the everything else just became irrelevant or just not very important. And so I was actually kind of reluctant to put everything back on. But I just in this moment realized how profound the exercise was. Like yeah, that's what it was for me. It just gave, like, most things just seemed pretty unimportant.
Yeah, so I think when you take it from that perspective, it's the integration when you're coming out of it. What do you want to keep and what do you want to throw away? What doesn't serve you anymore? What allows you to be okay in the grief as you're ascending from it. And I think it's interesting, like, if your soul is saying, all of these other things I don't need, but I do need, whatever. Well, thank you. Anybody else?
Anyway, yeah. I was feeling that way. I felt like the crown and the necklace and all of that going in was who I thought I was, right? And what I thought, well, what part of that was me really was my ego or my false understanding of who I am, but going into the underworld and really being seen, totally being seen and embraced and coming back out. And it's like, I didn't really need any of that, and it was almost like, if I take this, who can I give it to so they can go to the other world? We have the same experience. It's almost like an artifact in some way, not for me, but maybe for someone else.
Don't forget what you just said about what can I do for others, because that's part of this work too. Once you've struggled through grief and you come to a place where you're okay with it, it's part of who you are still, but you're okay with it and your soul is kind of integrated it. Now it's up to us to help other people through it. Because somebody, I don't remember who said it, but when we were younger, did we know how to grieve? Did we know what to do? And did we have anyone taking us along for that journey? So part of the apprenticeship, you'll see in a couple of slides, part of an apprenticeship with sorrow
apprenticeship with sorrow is service and sharing what we've learned from our deep experiences with sorrow and grief. So what is an apprenticeship with grief? I don't know why I can't say that right now. We all know that, you know, as a human being, we are going to experience grief and sorrow. It touches everyone. That was the one thing that when my mom died, that was so profound for me, is there's no one that can get through life without experiencing grief and loss. It's just such a profound human experience. And, you know, the grief that we feel when we lose somebody that we love or something that we love, a pet or whatever, you know, it's tied into what we see every day. There's a lot of things to be sorrowful about in our lives. So it's tied in. It's hard to separate those two. And if we don't work with that, if we leave those things pushed down or unattended, then our soul kind of goes into hiding. So when we work with grief and we allow space for it, and we have the kind of experiences like June and Susanna described, where we feel a connection with a spirit, and we've worked through the painful aspects of it. And it sounds like, and what I know of Susanna is that allowed her soul to be freely expressed. So if we don't do the work, we lose our soul. And I think that's what we see in a lot of the things that are the ills of our society, because we've pushed down the work of grief, or pushed aside the work of grief. So people end up with addictions and unhealthy ways of dealing with pain and suffering. So our soul wants us to take up this apprenticeship and learn how to welcome sorrow. And as hard as that sounds, to hold it and make space for it and to work through it. And we do that with love and compassion. So we can begin an apprenticeship as soon as we realize, and we're all of an age where we've realized this already, that grief is ever present in our lives. And once we realize that, then we can begin to open our hearts. Frances Weller, who is an amazing author who does a lot of work with grief and suffering and sorrow, says, we begin with the simple gesture of picking up the shards of grief that lie littered on the floor of our house. Nothing special, nothing heroic, not unlike the novices entering their apprenticeship with their master. We begin humbly, sweeping the shavings, mixing the pigments, cleaning the brushes, tending the fires. We do this to build our capacity to hold sorrow. And then we can welcome the ever-present existence of grief in our lives. So what do you need to do this work? This is the work that needs to be done. And these are the things that we need to do to be doing this work. And it's not just individual work. This is community work. Grieving needs to be part of a community, whether that's your family or it's really difficult to grieve on your own. But the first and foremost medicine we need for sorrow and grief is self-compassion. It's real easy, you know, I think June was talking about blaming yourself or shame or feeling bad when you're feeling sorrow and grief. Self-compassion cultivated over time can really help you metabolize the grief and open up that space in your heart for that to come. These aren't things to do in the moments of grief. These are things that need to be cultivated in our lives so that when grief does present itself, that we have what we need to welcome it and nourish it and move beyond it. So self-compassion is first and foremost. There's no order to these except self-compassion needs to be first. Friendship and love. Like I said before, we can't go, no one can take the journey for us, but it's really wonderful when you have somebody along to walk with you. Creative expression. Some of the most profound works of art have come from places of grief. And we need to allow ourselves to express ourselves creatively with abandon, to do that without that judgment or critique, to just feel that the wonderful gift that you have can be offered for yourself. Imagination. Grief can make our world seem small. A life where we've cultivated our imagination and creative expression can help us move past that sense of smallness and imagine other possibilities for how our world can be. Ritual is really, I think, an important aspect. Community ritual or individual rituals. We have some in our culture. There are, funerals and things like that. But some personal rituals around grief, or rituals just around your life. Bringing some ritual to life allows us to connect with the divine. Spaciousness and time. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Allowing yourself time to recover, allowing yourself time to not respond to things. Practicing mindfulness is a way to give yourself that spaciousness and time, not feel like there has to be a response immediately, that you can sit with things, whether it's grief or frustration or anger or whatever, but allowing yourself spaciousness and time. And part of that spaciousness and time is silence. Not feeling like you have to say things to answer to other people or respond to other people. Giving yourself the time to be quiet and undistracted and just not feel like you have to do anything. Appreciation of beauty. Like I said, these things need to be cultivated over a lifetime, and they'll serve us incredibly well when we feel like when we're feeling the overwhelmingness of sorrow and grief. Gratitude and grief go hand in hand. And I'm sure those of you that have lost somebody dear to you, you have that profound gratitude that they were in your life. And that is held together with that grief and sorrow. And practicing gratitude allows you to be able to hold that grief and sorrow and have that spaciousness in your heart. And like I said earlier, this apprenticeship with grief and this approach to grief comes with an obligation, I think, to share this approach with other people. How did you learn to grieve? How did any of us learn the first time we felt a profound loss? How did you learn to grieve? Who helped you through that? What was that experience like? And if it was a great experience, that's wonderful. Are you sharing that experience with others around you who have experienced grief or loss? If it wasn't a great experience, what would you want other people close to you to hold in a time of grief or sorrow? So being aware of and signing up for an apprenticeship with grief doesn't just serve you, it serves the people around you, it serves the community, it serves humanity. And it's not an apprenticeship that ever ends. Our work with grief happens throughout our entire life, and it isn't something that can be pushed aside. This apprenticeship, the work that we need to do to be prepared for this apprenticeship is something that we should, that we could be doing every day. Self-compassion, friendship and love, beauty, imagination, silence, gratitude, and service. These are all things that support us in our grief. Yes, Lawrence. You're on mute. Start again.
Okay, it reminds me of a conference I attended many years ago focused on interspecies communication, wherein we were told of a family of elephants who had lost one of their members. And they would grieve together over the loss. They would take the bones of the beloved lost one, and they would roll it around in the ground, and they would grieve. And they kind of did like a ritual, abstract dance of some type. And it reminds me that we've lost so much of that, which was not inherently done or naturally done by many indigenous cultures, where they would form a fire circle with drumming and dancing and chanting and so on, where they became one with the spirit of the being who was leaving this plane. And by going beyond the words, the mental connection, and feeling the empathy with our tribe, our community, including the one who has left us, those are things that I feel do heal and have healed in the past. And we've lost so much of that in our more mentally oriented culture, where we need to come up with eulogies in verbal orders, rather than joining together as a community and merging with the passage, grieving together and releasing together, and blessing on its way.
I think you're right about our culture. We've really whitewashed a lot of the grief over time, and other cultures have so many beautiful rituals and so many practices that we could bring back. I mean, there's no reason. I love to see what's happening with the funeral industry right now, that people are saying, no, I don't want this. We're doing something totally different. So, you know, this is just really just scratching the surface. You could spend years studying grief, and there's so much work that could be done. There are you know, creation of rituals around it, community responsibilities around it. But if this is something that you know, piqued your interest in, something that you want to learn more about, The Wild Edge of Sorrow is probably the best book, or The Smell of Dust on Rain. Both of those are very powerful books on grief. And I can tell you the name of the book. I can't see it. But The Smell of Dust on Rain, The Smell of Rain on the Dust. I'm sorry, I've got that balance. The Smell of Rain on the Dust, and then The Wild Edge of Sorrow are both very beautiful works about the soul work of grief.
Well, thank you, Kelly. This has been really just a fabulous invitation to recover a part of ourselves, and you presented in such a practical way. Really appreciate your wisdom and your experience, and just holding space for us so beautifully. We have maybe time for maybe one question or comment. Okay, well, I know that you've given all of us plenty of food for thought and practice, in fact, and want to remind everybody that we meet the first Wednesday of every month. And next month, speaking of Indigenous practices, Stephanie Gleason will be our speaker, and she's talking about returning to original principles. And so be talking about the perspective of Indigenous peoples. So what a perfect segue for that, Kelly. And also you mentioned sorrow as also the gateway to our shadow work. So I think that's a beautiful plug for our workshop and retreat series, which I put a link to in the chat. And most of you should have gotten, if you're on our mailing list, you would have gotten an email about it. But two of our series, grief as a entryway to healing, and also relationships as an entryway to healing, are using those two facets to dive into the shadow work. So we in Sanctuary of Earth feel this is really essential to us to be able to move into the future that we're all dreaming of. So I hope you will consider joining us on some of those programs or anything else that we have listed on offer between now and the end of the summer. And again, thank you for your consideration for making a contribution to support our program. So with that, I think we can wrap up, and just again, gratitude for a wonderful program, Kelly, so enriching. And thank you everybody for joining us tonight, and hope to see you again real soon.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.